Welcome back to True Assassins, the only show that's brave enough to dive headfirst into the world of, true assassins. I'm your host, Adrian Smith, and every day we unpack another wild true crime mystery story inspired by the shadowy world of murder, hitmen, and assassins.
That's right.
But today's episode is a bit different.
A little bit.
We're taking inspiration from a fictional scenario, and think zombies and the assassins tasked with taking them down.
Yeah.
Buckle up, because this one is a wild ride. I'm joined today by an expert in all things.
Well, zombies.
That's right, the queen of the undead.
I'll take that title.
Julia, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Excited to talk about this very interesting topic.
I am too, and I think the listeners are really going to enjoy this one.
I think so too.
So to get started, what kind of source material are we working with today, Julia?
So we've got a mission briefing and an after-action report for a team called the Zombie Response Team, or ZRT for short.
Right.
And these documents, they're fictional, but they offer a fascinating glimpse into a world where, highly trained assassins are deployed against undead threats.
Okay, so and this mission briefing mentions neutralizing a zombified senator with extreme prejudice.
Yes.
That sounds pretty intense. I mean,
Yeah.
what is the rationale behind using assassins in a zombie apocalypse?
Well, that's a great question. You can imagine that in a world that's been, overrun by zombies, the military would be stretched thin, just dealing with the general chaos, hordes of undead everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you have someone who is, high profile, like a senator, you need a more targeted approach.
Right.
Someone that has, the skills to eliminate that threat, quickly and quietly without causing more panic.
Yeah, you don't want to have some kind of military operation that would, draw more attention to the situation, create more of a problem than you're trying to solve.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about these ZRT operatives. I mean, what kind of training do they have?
So the briefing suggests that, they're recruited from existing special forces and intelligence units.
Yeah.
They're the best of the best, essentially.
Right.
They have expertise in close quarters combat, weapons handling, and stealth tactics.
Sure.
But what's really interesting is they also receive training in zombie behavior and psychology.
Zombie psychology.
Yeah.
I didn't know zombies even had a psychology.
Right.
I mean,
It's a fictional concept, of course.
of course.
But if you think about it, to effectively combat any enemy, you need to understand their strengths and weaknesses and how they operate, right? So even in this outlandish scenario, the source material really emphasizes strategic thinking and understanding your opponent.
Yeah, that's a great point. It reminds me of how real-world military strategists will study, their enemies' cultures and tactics.
Absolutely.
And we have these highly trained assassins.
Yes.
Their mission is to take down this zombified senator. Where does this all take place?
The mission briefing mentions the senator's mansion. It's described as a sprawling estate with multiple security layers,
Correct.
making it a challenging target, even without the added complication of zombies.
Yeah, I bet. And it sounds like the mansion is crawling with undead. Not just the senator himself, but the after-action report mentions former staffers, security personnel, even the caterers.
Right.
It paints a pretty grim picture.
It does, yeah.
One detail that kind of stood out to me in reading through these was that there was a lingering scent of Axe body spray
Yes.
amidst the stench of decay.
Yes.
Axe body spray in a zombie apocalypse.
You would think that wouldn't be a thing, right?
That's a strange detail to include.
I think it serves a purpose. It highlights the jarring juxtaposition of normalcy and chaos, the way the familiar can become unsettling in a world turned upside down.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the most extreme circumstances, the mundane can still persist.
That's an interesting observation. It makes you think about how we as humans try to hold on to a sense of normalcy even when everything around us is falling apart.
Right.
It's like the end of the world is happening, but
Gotta have my Axe body spray.
I still gotta smell good,
Exactly.
So let's talk about these two ZRT operatives.
Yeah.
The after-action report focuses on Jenkins and Ramirez, who are described as the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about them?
Well, the report doesn't, delve too deeply into their backstories,
Okay.
but it does offer glimpses into their personalities and how they, handle the immense pressure of their job.
Right.
Jenkins seems to be more, I would say, introspective, wrestling with the moral implications of what they do.
Right. And there's a line in there where he questions what happens to them when it's all over, what happens to soldiers that are trained for a specific purpose when that purpose no longer exists. It's a question that resonates even outside of this fictional context.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see it with, real-world soldiers struggling to reintegrate into civilian life after wartime. The skills and mindset needed to survive in a combat zone, they don't always translate well to a peaceful society.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what about Ramirez?
Yeah.
How does she cope with all of this?
Ramirez appears to be more pragmatic,
Okay.
focused on completing the mission, surviving.
Right.
She urges Jenkins not to dwell on the philosophical questions, to compartmentalize in order to function.
So two sides of the same coin, essentially.
Yeah, you could say that.
One grappling with the bigger picture, the other focusing on the immediate task at hand.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic we see in a lot of high-stress professions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got these two highly trained assassins.
Yes.
A zombified senator holed up in his fortified mansion, a mission objective that reads like something out of a spy thriller.
It's a good setup, right?
This is where things start to get really interesting, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what's next?
Well, the after-action report goes into great detail about the mansion infiltration and the final confrontation with the senator.
Okay.
And it's a tense, action-packed sequence that raises some important questions about the nature of violence and the psychological toll of taking a life.
Even an undead one.
Even an undead one, yeah.
I mean, does it matter if it's undead?
Yeah. That's a question we're going to have to unpack, isn't it?
It is.
And I think that's a great place to leave it for our listeners.
Yeah, let's leave them hanging on that. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode, where we'll break down this mansion raid and explore the ethical dilemmas faced by these true assassins in a world overrun by the undead.
Yes, we'll be right back after a quick break.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to True Assassins. We left off with Jenkins and Ramirez about to infiltrate the senator's mansion.
A seemingly impenetrable fortress now teeming with the undead. It's a scenario straight out of a nightmare.
It is, isn't it? But even in this fictional context, there are real-world parallels.
Right.
The tactics described, the emphasis on precision and efficiency.
Right.
It all reflects the training and the mindset of elite military and intelligence operatives.
That's right. So how do Jenkins and Ramirez even begin to tackle this challenge? I mean, we're talking about a mansion that's swarming with zombies, plus a zombified senator that's holed up in a panic room.
Well, the report highlights their methodical approach. They utilize a combination of stealth, distraction, and brute force to clear a path to the senator's location. Think about it. Even in a zombie apocalypse, strategic thinking is paramount.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to just charge in guns blazing and risk alerting the entire horde.
Exactly.
So what kind of tactics are we talking about?
Well, the report mentions using suppressed weapons to eliminate isolated threats, creating diversions to draw zombies away from key areas, and even utilizing the environment itself to their advantage.
I can only imagine the kind of ingenuity and quick thinking that's required in a situation like that. You'd have to be constantly adapting, thinking on your feet.
Absolutely, and the report highlights the importance of teamwork. Jenkins and Ramirez are constantly communicating, covering each other, anticipating threats. It's a testament to the effectiveness of a well-trained unit operating under extreme pressure.
Okay, so they're making their way through the mansion, clearing out zombies, heading for the senator. What's it like inside? I'm picturing just chaos, blood splattered everywhere.
The report doesn't spare any details. It describes the mansion as a scene of carnage. But what struck me was the mention of everyday objects amidst the chaos. A toppled vase, a child's drawing hanging on a wall. These details serve as a reminder of the lives that were lived here, the normalcy that existed before the outbreak.
It is a sobering thought, a reminder that even in this fictional scenario, there's a human cost to the zombie apocalypse.
Exactly, and it makes the actions of Jenkins and Ramirez all the more complex.
Right.
They're not just fighting monsters, they're confronting the aftermath of a tragedy.
Right. So they finally reach the panic room. What happens next? I'm assuming it's not a simple knock on the door.
Not quite. The panic room is described as a reinforced steel vault, designed to withstand just about anything. But remember, we're dealing with zombified Secret Service agents protecting the senator. Brute force alone won't be enough.
So what do? They have to come up with a plan, right?
They do, and it's a testament to their training and ability to think outside the box. The report mentions using a combination of flashbang grenades to disorient the zombies and a specialized breaching charge to create an entry point.
It sounds like a scene straight out of a tactical operations manual. This level of detail is incredible.
It is, and it highlights the importance of preparation and having the right tools for the job, even in a scenario as unpredictable as a zombie apocalypse.
Okay, so they breach the panic room. What's it like inside? Do they immediately engage the senator?
The report describes the interior as dimly lit and claustrophobic, filled with the stench of decay. And yes, the senator is there waiting for them, along with 2 zombified Secret Service agents. It's a tense standoff, a life-or-death confrontation in a confined space.
I can only imagine the adrenaline pumping, the senses on high alert. What happens next? Do they just open fire?
The report emphasizes their discipline and restraint.
Okay.
They don't just start shooting wildly.
Right.
Remember, their mission is to neutralize the senator, not cause unnecessary carnage.
Right.
They use their training to assess the situation, identify the most effective course of action.
Okay, so they're taking their time, being strategic. What's the plan?
Ramirez, always the pragmatist, takes point. She uses a flashbang to disorient the zombies, creating an opening for Jenkins to disable the senator before he can react. It's a coordinated effort, a testament to their teamwork and years of training.
Wow, that sounds incredibly intense. And it works. They manage to subdue the senator.
They do, but it's not without its challenges.
Okay.
The report mentions a struggle, a close quarters fight where Jenkins is forced to use his combat skills to restrain the senator. It's a brutal, visceral encounter that highlights the raw physicality of their work.
And Ramirez, what's her role in all of this?
She provides cover, eliminating the zombified Secret Service agents who pose an immediate threat. It's a chillingly efficient display of marksmanship, a reminder that these operatives are trained to kill without hesitation.
Man, what a scene. It's grim, but you can't deny the skill and courage it takes to do what they do.
You can't.
But what about the aftermath? How do Jenkins and Ramirez react after neutralizing such a high-profile target? Do they celebrate, mourn?
That's where the report gets really interesting because their reaction is anything but typical.
Right.
There's no cheering, no high fives, just a grim silence as they survey the carnage they've created.
It must be a heavy burden to carry, knowing that they're taking lives, even undead ones, on a regular basis. How do they deal with that psychological weight?
Well, it's clear that both Jenkins and Ramirez are struggling with the moral implications of their actions. Jenkins in particular seems haunted by the humanity he sees in the undead, the echoes of the lives they once lived.
You mentioned earlier that he's troubled by the sight of a zombie clutching a teddy bear. That must really mess with your head, seeing those glimmers of the past in these monstrous creatures.
Absolutely. It forces him to confront the uncomfortable truth that the line between monster and victim isn't always so clear-cut.
Right. And it makes you wonder what happens when the zombie threat is finally eradicated. What becomes of these highly skilled assassins? Do they simply return to civilian life as if nothing happened?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a question that haunts Jenkins as they leave the senator's mansion. He wonders aloud, what happens when it's all over?
And what does Ramirez say to that? Does she have any answers?
Her response is chillingly pragmatic. She says, we get put on another list. That's how this works.
Wow, talk about a bleak outlook.
Right.
She's basically saying that their skills will always be in demand, that there will always be another threat, another enemy to eliminate.
Exactly, and it highlights the tragic reality of their situation. They've been trained to be weapons, tools of destruction, and once you create a weapon, it's hard to put it back in the box.
That's a sobering thought. So even in victory, there's a sense of unease, a foreboding that this cycle of violence will never truly end.
Precisely, and it leads to an even more unsettling question that Jenkins poses towards the end of their mission. He wonders how much longer it will be until their targets aren't mindless zombies, but human beings who are simply doing their jobs.
That's a chilling thought. Is he suggesting that the ZRT might eventually be turned against their own kind?
It's certainly a possibility, and one that highlights the slippery slope of violence and the dehumanizing nature of war.
It's a grim reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, the greatest threat to humanity often comes from within.
And with that thought-provoking observation, we'll have to pause our deep dive into the world of zombie assassins. But stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore the broader implications of this case and delve into the ethical dilemmas faced by those who wield deadly force in a world gone mad.
Don't go anywhere, folks. The most chilling part of this story is yet to come. Welcome back to True Assassins. We've been, breaking down this fictional mission briefing and after-action report, delving into this world of the ZRT and the unsettling tasks they are given.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating deep dive, hasn't it? We've seen the tactical precision, the psychological strain, and the moral dilemmas faced by these elite assassins.
You know what strikes me is how, even in a world overrun by zombies, the source material focuses on the human element. It's not just about mindless killing. It's about the choices these operatives make, the burden they carry.
That's a great observation, and it speaks to a larger truth about warfare in general. Whether it's fighting zombies or human enemies, the psychological and ethical implications are always present.
Right. And remember Jenkins' question, what happens when it's all over? It's a question that has echoed throughout history. What becomes of soldiers trained for violence when the war ends? How do they reintegrate into a society that may no longer understand or need their skills?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. And in the case of the ZRT, as Ramirez so bluntly puts it, we get put on another list. It suggests that their skills will always be in demand, that there will always be another threat to justify their existence.
That's a chilling thought, Julia. It raises the question of whether we create a cycle of violence by training individuals for such specialized lethal purposes.
It's a valid concern, and it's something societies have grappled with for centuries. How do you balance the need for security and defense with the potential consequences of creating a class of highly skilled warriors?
And in the context of this fictional scenario, it goes even deeper. Jenkins wonders how long it'll be before their targets aren't mindless zombies, but human beings who are simply doing their jobs.
Right.
That's a dark path to consider.
It is, and it speaks to the slippery slope of dehumanization. When you train individuals to see certain groups as the enemy, it becomes easier to justify violence against them even when the original threat may no longer exist.
It's a sobering reminder that the tools of warfare, once created, can be difficult to control, and it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the capacity for brutality exists within us all.
So as we wrap up our analysis of this fictional ZRT mission, what key takeaways would you say stand out?
Well, for me, it's the importance of understanding the human cost of conflict, even in a scenario as outlandish as a zombie apocalypse. These operatives aren't just killing machines, they're individuals grappling with moral dilemmas, psychological strain, in an uncertain future.
I agree, and it highlights the need for thoughtful consideration of the long-term consequences of creating specialized military units. What happens to these individuals when their mission ends? How do we reintegrate them into society and address the psychological toll of their experiences?
Those are questions that deserve our attention, even if they arise from a fictional scenario, because at the end of the day, it's about understanding the human element of warfare and ensuring that we don't create systems that perpetuate cycles of violence.
Well said. And on that note, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought. This fictional scenario may seem extreme, but it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own capacity for violence and the need for responsible use of force, even in the face of unimaginable threats.
That's right. And remember, folks, if you're looking for more addictive true crime stories, we release new episodes of True Assassins every single day. So hit that subscribe button and join us tomorrow as we delve into another chilling case ripped from the headlines.
We'll see you then.
Until then, stay safe out there.